All right. Well, thank you for those of you who are on time. It is 12:15, so I do want to respect everyone's time. And with that, I think we are good to get started. So, good afternoon, and thank you guys for joining us for part two of the four-part ERP web education series that's being put on by Liberty Technology Advisors and Sage Enterprise Management. Today, we are going to be looking at improving customer service through inventory visibility. Just a quick look at today's agenda. We'll go ahead and just update you on the series, introduce our guests today, and then spend a good amount of time talking about the topic, which is, again, improving customer service through inventory visibility. We'll touch on some real world business problems and examples, and then we'll go ahead and demo some solutions to those problems on Sage EM today. And we'll finish up with some questions and answers. Just some general housekeeping with regards to the Q&A. If you do have a question at any time, please go ahead and submit those either through the chat or the Q&A portals. And if we can fit it in during the presentation, we'll definitely address those questions. Otherwise, we'll hold them to the end for that designated time. So if you were with us last week or 2 weeks ago, we talked about product traceability in the first webcast. That is also available online. Obviously, we see today's, and then in the next 4 weeks, we'll be also talking about inventory forecasting and long-term planning on the 21st, and finishing up the series with harnessing actionable data for informed decision-making on the 7th of March. So our guests today are Mark Pinard. Mark is a senior solutions consultant at Sage EM. Mark has an extensive background and has 25 years of experience in the food and beverage manufacturing industry. You can read a little bit more about Mark on the screen. And we're also joined by John Berglund. John is the co-founder and partner of Liberty Technology Advisors. Prior to his time at LTA, John was also a VP and CFO. So we're very happy to have the two of them join us today for today's talk. With that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to John so we can get started talking customer service.
Hello, everybody. I just want to reiterate what Brad said. We appreciate your time and want to take as much advantage of that as we can. Going to talk about a couple of things: inventory visibility. We're going to talk about an overview, areas of visibility, systems and tools, and the impact on customer service, and how important it is to know where your inventory is and what that means. So let's talk about a couple of real-world business examples. These are examples that we've seen at our client sites. We're going to start with lot and serial tracking and traceability. We're going to talk a little bit about the ability to track properly in recall tracking, and the consequences of improper tracking, which goes beyond, by the way, customer complaints and returns. There's some regulatory issues that exist with that. So tracking by the lot or serial number is critical. We've got clients out there right now who are regulated either by the FAA, the FDA, as well as the alcohol and tobacco organizations. So these clients ran into specific problems. I'll speak specifically to one that's regulated by the FDA. They make a medical device. And because of their inability to track the serial number back to when it was sterilized, when it was produced, and the lot numbers of the manufacturing raw materials that came in to make it, they failed their FDA audit. So in failing the FDA audit, they were given roughly 3 months to remedy the situation. And they did so via Excel, but it's extremely painful, and they added people to payroll in order to do that. So that was a pretty serious consequence to what they were trying to do. The other thing to keep in mind is we've got many food processors, and the Bioterrorist Act that's in place right now requires them to be able to recall their products and track their products within 24 hours of the recall and or the request, which isn't necessarily a recall, but a request that takes place from the FDA. And so we've got a client out there now that puts products into finished good products. So they supply the proteins and the other mixes that go into finished good products. Their issue in tracking this is they ended up dropping down to spreadsheets, multiple spreadsheets. They could not respond in 24 hours. Even with that system, it was better than not having anything, but they still couldn't meet the standards that were set up by the regulatory authorities. The other issue is just internal, to be able to track by serial number or lot number for your own quality standards and your own quality goods, and being able to be able to go back to that. So we've got a client that does stuff that puts together equipment that goes onto airlines and airplanes. They have many engineering changes to the effect to improve the quality of it. And in order to do so, they have to be able to track back which items need to be upgraded and which ones don't. And so that's internal. That's not necessarily an FAA issue in this particular case, but it is an issue of them being able to track back to that. They also use lot number and serial tracking number to track shelf life. So some of their equipment and the shelf life that's in their equipment, and with engineering changes that come in, knowing what they have on the shelf and what can or can't be used and what the impact is on that, to do the analysis on that. So that's some of the lot and serial tracking traceability that's that exists today with our current clients. Expiration. So we've got a number of, and then this will dovetail into the serial number and lot tracking that we talked about. We've got a number of clients that have shelf life inventory and costs that are devoted to that. And that shelf life inventory could be in the food industry, which mostly it is, but it can also be in industries where the people who put the powder into the proteins, their shelf life may be June 1st, but their actual shelf life on which they can ship stuff is January 1st, because they can't ship anything that's going to expire within 6 months. So there's ability to track two different shelf lives. And one is the actual shelf life of when the product.
Oops, 1 second. It looks like we lost John for a sec. So just hang in there. It sounded like he was dealing with a little bit of a dog issue. Mark, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to chime in with.
Yeah, I could.
I lost internet connection there.
Oh, okay.
So the managing that shelf life inventory becomes a two-phased component to it, and that's being able to both trace it back to its original and absolute due date, but then being able to back in a lead time in which they can actually ship the product. And so there are constraints that exist on two different levels, and tracking that became difficult because what they were doing is they were tracking it in their system as the ultimate shelf life, and then they were backing it off in Excel to track when they could ship it or not. So their customer service people, and the impact on this was when they had an inquiry that came in, they could see that they had the inventory, but then they had to go to the spreadsheet to look and see, can I ship the inventory? So the ability to know what you can ship and when you can ship it, the available to ship, the available to promise, become really critical in this arena. Status and availability. So this will dovetail a little bit into what we just talked about. Part of this is going to be, how do I know what I have and where it's at, both internal and external communications. And this deals with both manufacturing, distribution, and customers. So knowing what product is in-house that is available to ship and can ship, within a reasonable time, and being able to know that date that it can ship, so you can give your customer the exact date when it's going to ship and when it should arrive at their location. It's important to know what's coming in-house as well. So if there's a purchase order out for an item that we're going to send out, then, or that you're going to ship immediately, stock, basically stock or dock to stock and dock to ship. You need to know when that product's going to come in and what the status is. But furthermore, you need to know if that product is delayed or that shipment is delayed, which orders that affects. So customer service can be proactive, going out and explaining to your customers that the product was delayed and it's now going to be here at this date before the date comes up and it doesn't ship. In addition, you need to know what's going on to the line and when stuff is coming off the production line. And that also encompasses what stuff is coming in, what items are coming in, or raw materials are coming in that need to be on time in order to produce on time. Having all of that information available at the customer service level and having their abilities to go out and look for that information at the time the order is being placed or at the time they're entering the order is critical to servicing your customers at a very high level. This also includes anything that might be entered in via a portal or via a website, and being able to get that data to that customer as they're entering in that order and letting them know when it will be available and how it will be there. So the communication piece is really important, and that communication is based on the data. So where does that data sit and how do they get to that data? Do they have to go to multiple systems to get the data, which causes delays? Or can they get to that data immediately and have that data readily available through their modern ERP system? And the consequences of that are, in a lot of the commodity businesses, people will just go someplace else. So if I can't get an order in.
This sounds like we're having a little interruption again. So this is Mark Pinard. Maybe I can just kind of pick up from where we left off. Can you folks hear me? Brad, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Mark.
Okay, great. But I just want to point out that having information available at time of order entry is huge anymore. There are a lot of companies out there right now that are really making their money being able to provide customer service by promising a date for an order and getting that and matching that date, meeting that date, and getting the product out there to their customer base. I mean, think about what Amazon has done for distribution now, where you can sign up with Prime, get it there overnighted for no extra charge. They're just starting to control the marketplace and what's being bought and sold and to whom. And I'm looking at this in the future and thinking technology's so much to do with this, but if some of these old line manufacturing companies don't keep up with that, there's really a huge risk out there for some of that business just going away, where your customers will go to where they can get it. Maybe they won't get it sooner. Maybe they'll still get it a day or two later than they would have with you. But the fact is, if somebody could promise them a date that is achievable and that they could work with, they'll get the business. And I just think that's where a lot of the market is just going today, is getting the information and being able to attain the dates that are promised.
And Mark, just to dovetail into that, and I apologize, I am working from home today. My dog just went nuts over a squirrel. It is important because people want to know what they can be assured of. So if you're going to say, I think I can get it to you at that time, versus somebody can say, I will get it to you at this time. And even though, to Mark's point, if it's later or 2 days later, at least they know they've got a commitment. You can only miss commitment so many times too. So even if you commit to it and you don't make it, or you don't hit that time frame, eventually whatever you tell them is not going to be, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So it's really critical that the customer service agents and the customer people who are interacting, customer facing employees, have the ability to look at information and make sure that it's accurate, that it's complete, and that they have confidence in what they're delivering to them. So with that, I believe we'll turn it over to Mark so he can start to show us some of the real world examples of how modern ERP systems can handle this.
Great. Thanks, John. Let me do a little housekeeping here and we'll open up my system. So my name's Mark Pinard. I'm a direct employee with Sage, and I've been working with the enterprise management software for many, many years. It's been known by different names from way back in the previous years, but it's evolved over time, and it's focused in manufacturing, and it's focused in discrete manufacturing and process manufacturing. So we support a lot of companies who are, making food and beverage. They're doing pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals. They're doing cosmetics. They're doing all of those things. And I just want to reemphasize too, going back to all of that traceability. I mean, that's always a huge thing, because what happens is, without that, the government, the FDA, whoever your regulatory agency, can come in and really shut you down. If you don't have the ability to do a recall in 24 hours, you could be out of business quicker than that. And I know, from old days, remembering the old spinach scare from probably 15 years ago, where the growers in California couldn't identify what field the spinach came from. And had they had enterprise management at their fingertips, they would have been able to isolate where that spinach was grown and how it was processed a lot quicker than they did. And you think of the other side of just the organization being in pain when that happens. Just think about too, some of the customers who have actually contracted E. coli or Ebola or some of these other diseases that are foodborne and come with the food. I know for me, if it was my company, I would feel really bad if I knew I needed to do a recall, but I couldn't get it done for 2 weeks and other people got sick within those 2 weeks. So I just think there's a huge amount of risk out there, and a huge amount of just, kind of moral values that are really strong, that just, you need to do the best to take care of those things.
Mark, just to add to that a little bit, there's examples that I wanted to point out that I failed to previously. The first is the recent recall with nectarines, peaches, and I believe it was plums that happened, and being able to trace back to identify where there are possible shipments of contaminated product that went out. And they had to do that within 24 hours to be able to get there. I don't know if they hit that deadline or not, but that's a real prime example. Mm-hmm. The other thing, for those of you who may be a little bit older, is the Tylenol scare. Where the Tylenol had been tainted, and because they couldn't trace that specific lot number back to where they shipped it, they had to pull Tylenol from every shelf in every store in the country. So instead of being able to target and just say, hey, we shipped it to these organizations or this distribution center, which shipped it to these retail outlets, they had to pull them all because they didn't know. So think about the cost of having to do that. Sorry, Mark, I just wanted to throw this out.
Thanks, John. No, that's exactly the point. Is that it's just everything boils down to time, and time is money, and money is what makes a company profitable or not. So here's what I'm going to do in the software demonstration. I'm going to do this in 3 parts. The first one is we're going to look at a sales order, and we're going to go in and look at availability of material and what we're going to sell. Then we're going to if there are any questions that pop up, Brad, in the chat room at that point, we could stop then and see if there are any ready to go. After that, what we're going to do is I want to drop into the product master and show you in enterprise management where some of those fields are turned on and off that drive these capabilities, like the expiration management, the lot traceability. And then in the third, and we'll take questions there again. And in the third piece, there's also, okay, so what do we need to do in an ERP system like enterprise management to keep all of this inventory information up to date? So we're going to go to a third screen and just talk about some of the capabilities there. But really, I also want to emphasize that anymore in 2019 and going forward, ERP systems should all be able to do what I'm going to show you here. But we know in a marketplace, not all products are created equal. So if you're out looking for new ERP software and you're a process manufacturer or a discrete manufacturer who needs to track serialized components into sub-assemblies, enterprise management is definitely one of those products that you need to go in and take a look at. So here's where I want to go. I created a sales order. So I'm just going to open up my sales order screen. I put this order in yesterday, so it was ready for us to go, and you don't have to sit and watch me do a bunch of keystrokes. But I've created my order, which is here in the center of the screen. The purchase order is called food order number 1. It's going to customer Cisco Supply. And a lot of this information is just defaulted from who my customer is, but the important thing is I'm going to go over to the tab line and we want to look at what they've ordered. And we're using raisin bread for an example. I have a lot of different food products, but I picked raisin bran just for today because it sounded good. I have 2 line items on my sales order. I've sold them raisin bran private label number 1, and then another line item with private label number 4. And I just want to bring your attention to the line item as I scroll over. I've ordered 25 cases of each of these, and it's got a price that's spelled out there for that customer-based pricing. And over on the right, well, as I scroll over, one of the line items has been allocated, which means, gosh, I've got all the inventory out. It's available for me to use. Enterprise management allocated it to the order. That line item is good to go. We don't have to do any research. It's ready to go out and ship. And that's huge in itself, right? Because the only thing you should need to manage are things that are exceptions, things that fall outside the normal rules. Hence, we're comparing that to the second line item, which says, oh, I've got a shortage. Well, now we need to find out is like, okay, we've got a shortage. I could look and say, why do we have a shortage? And I can look and think, okay, so how do I fix this so that I can give my customer a date? Because right now I'd be looking going, I don't know, it'll be there sometime. So a couple things that I want to do. I'm going to just scroll back over to the right. And the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to drop down in my sales order screen, and I'm going to bring up another screen that's my stock by site. And what this is going to show me is inventory in 2 modes. One is I've got a grid up above that's showing me that, oh, I've got 5 internal, 25 committed to sales orders, and 2,300 that are due in from production. So I'm looking at that numerically, which that's great. All of them, accountants like to look at numbers, doctors look at numbers, salespeople, we like to look at graphs. So I've presented the same information graphically down below. So I could see over here is none in stock, 25 that are on order, 2,300 that are due in from production. Well, with enterprise management, I may want to look and say, well, okay, what's going on with these 5? Why are we not committing these? And with just a click of another button, I can look in and find out from my detailed stock what's going on. Well, that particular lot number is sitting in my lab, and it's sitting in a status called Q, which for me, Q is in quarantine, which means my quality control folks, we either got these 5 back from a customer, these 5 came in and they were suspect from production. Whatever the reason is, they're sitting out in a quarantine location. They're not even available to allocate to an order at this point. Those could be sitting there for a long, long time, and I'm not going to deal with those 5 because they may just get scrapped later on, and I don't even want to have to commit to those. What I can do, though, is turn around and say, well, gosh, I don't have it in a facility here, but what if I've got this item in multiple facilities, multiple distribution facilities, and I want to look across those to find out where do I have it. Looking here again, I have a lot of different facilities, and this particular company is spread out across the world. So I've got them in Australia, they're in Germany, they're in France, but the 2 here that are local to me are distribution center number 1 and distribution center 2. And now I'm looking at my inventory globally, and I can see that I have available to promise in distribution center number 1, 7,175 cases. And I also have 300 that are committed to sales orders and 16,200 that are due in from production within that site. Great. Well, so I could turn around and ship these from distribution center number 1, but this customer may reside in Seattle, and that distribution center could be all the way down in Fort Lauderdale. Well, if they want to pay the extra shipping, that's okay. We could certainly ship it from there, and we could make that determination and then fulfill the order from a different facility. But a lot of times a customer just says, no, you know what? I want the best price. I want to get that from you locally, so just tell me when you can get it to me. One more click of a button, and within enterprise management, I saw that I had several of those that were out there for production. So I'm going to drop down to what we call assignments. Assignments are kind of like a reserve, where I can look and say, okay, show me what I could propose to reserve from my inbound production that's not yet reserved for other customers. So I can see for the customer order where I need my 25 cases, I didn't have any in stock to fulfill from, but I do have a work order that's due in on the 19th of February, and I can commit part of that stock, part of what we're producing, to this customer. And I can do that by just hitting the save, and it will link that order together with that production order. And now when that production order is completed on the 19th, those 25 cases will be pulled aside, labeled, and shipped, pick, pack, and shipped for this customer without having to remember to go and do that. So there could be several customer orders tied or pegged back to this same inbound batch ticket, work order, whatever term we want to use. And there's also the capability here where you can go in as management people and rearrange those commitments as you need to. But you can set up rules ahead of time so those commitments happen automatically, and they will take into account priorities like first stock to expire, first out, right? We use that kind of allocation logic within enterprise management. So right here, within a couple of clicks of a couple of buttons, we've been able to go in and find out where inventory is, what do we have, what's in production, and go ahead and reserve or allocate, whatever term you like to use, reserve or allocate that inventory for this customer order so that when that inventory then is available from production, it will turn around and ship out automatically without a human well, we need human intervention because somebody's got to go out and do the pick, pack, and ship function, but enterprise management will know to print the labels, print the picking ticket, get it ready to go, and get people notified who need to go out and physically move the product and put it out on the dock. So that answers one of those huge questions. When can I get it to my customer, and how much of it can I get to my customer? So I'm just going to open it up here, Brad, and see if there are any questions in the chat room at this point.
Yeah, let's open it up. Does anyone have any questions just on that first phase that we talked about here?
If not, we can come back to it. I'll take some as a no.
Well, it looks like we got one here. Just confirming that we can use up oldest items or batches first.
That is correct. So enterprise management is really diverse here. They've got allocation methods that you could set by product. And product, the out-of-the-box allocation is what we call FIFO, first to expire, first out, because that helps you rotate your stock and make sure that you don't end up with obsolete stock that expired while it was on the shelf. But another method is what we call FIFO, first in, first out. Very similar to FIFO, but it's looking at when the lot was put into inventory, not when it's due to expire.
Great.
So the answer to that is yes.
Great. I don't see any other questions. So if anything comes up, definitely type them in. But otherwise, Mark, let's keep going.
Okay, and we can certainly come back to any that come up on this first screen. So here's where I'm going to go next. I'm going to drop into our product master that I've got opened up on another tab. Our product master really holds a lot of information. And I'm going to go look at one of those cinnamon breads right off the bat. And where I want to jump to, I'm not going to show and talk about every field that's here in the product master because we'd be here for probably a week. But this is where we turn these flags on and off that then control how these individual products move through enterprise management. And in this case, we've set it up to be automatically and mandatorily lot tracked. And we do have a lot sequence. So if you're comfortable with a year and a month and a day as being part of your lot identification number, enterprise management supports that. You could also use a constant value and a sequencer and a lot of other things in your lot sequence definition. But that is an important one. But remember, things like packaging don't necessarily need to be lot tracked, but anything that touches a product or is consumed by a human definitely needs to be lot tracked. If I scroll down in my screen, I've got some more that are very important. We've got allergen capability built into enterprise management. So being able to track different allergens in the products and being able to store those allergens either in a separate room or on the bottom of a shelf so that they don't cross-contaminate with other products. The last thing you want to do is put a pallet of peanuts at the top shelf with flour, sugar, and everything else underneath it, because all of a sudden now you have to list an allergen in your sugar and in your flour and anything else that may have been contaminated with it. So we set up some locations, and we're going to look at that in a bit, to store those different allergens in. Below that, we've got our recontrol and expiration. This is just huge. So this is saying that I've got a lead time, in this case, that will expire. This particular cinnamon bread will expire within 30 days. And I also have dates here that I can go out and recontrol those or recheck those, so I could have a checked lead time. And I also have a best use by date that we could populate that says, kind of like your Budweiser beer, that says, okay, this is its born on date, this is its drink by date, and this is its expiration date. We've got all of those contained within enterprise management. The other feature that I want to point out here is that we have this UBD coefficient. What this means is that a lot of times when you have a finished product, especially for food preparers, that particular item is something that your customer will buy from you, and they will use it in their recipe. So a lot of times they will dictate to you and say, do not send me a product that has less than 50% of its expiration value left, because I need time to consume it and put it into my recipe and prepare it before I send it out. So we can set up what we call the UBD coefficient. This is a global coefficient here for all customers, but we can also set this up customer by item specific. So customer A might want 50 days of shelf life, where customer B is okay with just 25 days of shelf life. And we will set that out on a different tab. Out here on the customer tab, we have that same UBD coefficient, and we set that up by the customer that's then assigned to this item that they buy from us on a regular basis. Okay, so those are huge fields that we populate. We set these flags, and then enterprise management knows what to do with the products, how to process them based on the way those flags are set. And one more point is on the unit of measure tab. This is where we could set up different units of measure, and enterprise management supports an unlimited number of units of measure. So here we're stocking something by the case, but my customers, we may sell these by the case. We could sell them by the pallet, as I've done down here below, or maybe we've got inner packaging on something that we sell, where we may put 12 items in a shrink wrap package and put 6 of those shrink wrap packages of 12 into a case. And I could spell all of those packaging units out here within my packaging units of measure, and we could sell on any of those units that we have created here within the unit of measure tab. Okay, a lot of different fields there. I have another one that I think is very important. It's important for us to be able to tell the customer if we have the product available for them and when we can get that product to them if we don't have it. But I think it's also important that we go through and we get the right cost that's associated with those products. So I'm going to skip down to my pinto beans that I use as an ingredient in my recipes, and I'm going to go to the supplier tab, and I have one more field and one more capability in enterprise management that I think is important, and that is a concept of what we call landed cost. So I may buy my pinto beans from Canada, or I may buy them from Europe, or I may buy them from Asia. It doesn't matter where I get them from, but what I can do with landed cost is I could set up these different cost drivers in a cost structure for things like freight, duty, brokerage, and I can predefine what those landed costs are going to be, so that when we receive the purchase order, these dollar values for these extraneous expenses will be rolled into the item cost and landed within the inventory asset account. Why is that important? Because all of those costs, if you don't have those built into your items and are accumulating those into the cost of your finished goods, you don't really know what it costs to make a package or a box or a case of something or a unit, an each, if you're a discrete manufacturer and just making an item. So what these are planned landed costs, and when the invoices come from the freight company or the broker or the duty company, we use in enterprise management a different type of an invoice that then goes back and rolls those into the original purchase order and receiving in the items, and will update those costs within the item value as their actual cost. So I think it's important to have product and tell a customer when we have product and when we can get it, but I think it's also important that we have the right cost associated with those items that we're selling at a certain price, because I see a lot of customers I work with, they pretty much have a fixed price. It's good for 6 months or it's good for a year. And what happens is as the price of pinto beans goes up, or as the freight cost bringing those pinto beans in goes up, my margin starts to erode. And of course, you're going to see here in week 4 how we can look at that using our analytical tools to look over time to see what the margin erosion looks like. But just another concept that I wanted to bring up, point out here as being equally as important to material availability, which is that having the costs updated there within the product master. So with that said, there's one more place, and this just brings that whole inventory piece home again. I'm going to go to the stock tab on my item warehouse. And this is just a listing of all of the different statuses of inventory that enterprise management tracks. Internally, A status, I have, what is that? 62,435 pounds of pinto beans. Do I have any in quarantine waiting for inspection? No. Do I have any rejected? No. Do I have any out on the loading dock waiting to be sold? No. Do I have any on the receiving dock waiting to be put away? No. So this is one snapshot where you can really look at all of the inventory for an item and really get an idea of where it's at or where it's not at. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to pause again, Brad, and just see if there are any questions that have popped up in this stage.
Yeah, any questions, feel free to type through. We haven't had any that popped up while you were talking, Mark.
Okay. Maybe I'm just being extra clear today. It could be. I have better days like everybody else. I have better days and I have bad days. The better days outnumber the bad ones. But let's move on then. In the essence of time, we'll move on and we'll follow up with any other questions that may pop up. Okay.
Great.
I'm going to go to a third tab that I have open with enterprise management. Just like to have my tabs already open and prepared. One of the questions that I get asked a lot when I go through the presentations is, okay, Mark, this inventory is great and I can keep it in all these different statuses. What are the mechanisms within enterprise management that we use in order to keep that inventory up to date? And let me just start by saying that first off, enterprise management keeps what we call a perpetual inventory. So that means every time inventory is used or transacted, enterprise management will update the inventory in all those different fields we just looked at with that new value. So it's updating real time as transactions are being entered from receiving, if we were to do a receipt, or from material issues in production, if we consume those materials. If we change stock from location A and put it over on a floor stock for consumption, that's another material movement. Everything in enterprise management that moves inventory is being done in a perpetual fashion. In other words, being updated all the time, real time. We also here have the ability within enterprise management to do things like physical inventory, cycle counting. And what those are just the opportunities to go out and recheck the available inventory and make sure that our counts are accurate. And most of my customers I work with, they classify those items in an A status, in a B status, and a C status. A items either being expensive or most commonly used. And they will count those, I'd say, maybe between every week or every 2 weeks. B items maybe every month, C items maybe every couple of months. But they cycle through every day with a handful of counts, and they will go out and count and then update. And that ensures that we keep our inventory values accurate. Remember too that anytime somebody on a forklift pulling material off a shelf, if they dropped a bag of pinto beans and that broke out over the floor and they were wasted, we have a transaction in enterprise management that will write those off to an expense account so the accountants can absorb that expense, write that off, and get it out of the value of the inventory. So there is some disciplines that we put in place when we implement enterprise management to make sure that all of those stock movements are taken care of.
Mark, it looks like we did have a question come in, and I do just want to be aware of time that we've got about 5 minutes
Perfect.
left scheduled. But the question that did come in was, how many tabs can I have open all at once? And does it allow me to look at multiple apps at the same time?
Great question. A little out of the agenda for today, but you can have, in enterprise management, you can have as many tabs open in your browser as you want. Now, functionally, there probably is a limit, 150. It really is more of a limit of how many tabs can you stand to see at the top of your browser. But really, I've got people that will work with 6, 7, or 8 tabs open at the same time. And in enterprise management, that's a single user license. You're not consuming a bunch of licenses. If you had a different browser open, like Firefox, then that would consume another license as compared to having just Chrome open like I do now. So, and that's another point, is you can have any browser you want on your desktop to run enterprise management. We're not picky about which browser you use. And Brad, now I forgot, what was the second part of that question?
Does it allow me to look at multiple apps at the same time?
Multiple apps. So I think the answer to that is yes, because I'm looking at enterprise management in my browser right now, but you could have Word open or Excel open and have those in a separate app, and you could move around on your desktop like you do with any other application. We also have the ability in enterprise management to take something like a Word document and embed it as part of the view in a form or in a screen within enterprise management. So if that was the question, yes, we can embed those spreadsheets, do those things right in enterprise management as well. Hopefully that answered that question.
Yeah, I think so. With respect to time, I do want to just walk through a couple slides just to finish up.
I've got just two more points, and then I'm done.
Let's
go
ahead and do that.
Great. The other thing that I want to point out too is that within enterprise management, we want to make, since we do require that you update these transactions in inventory movement to keep your perpetual inventory accurate, we do have these transactions set up so that you could use RF mobile devices. So you could create screens like these, or you could use the existing screens that you can then go mobile and use an RF device to input the information off barcode labels that are on shelves, on paperwork, on labels. And that way it reduces a lot of the time to track this information, and it eliminates a lot of error in updating the information, because really the only time they can make a mistake is when they got the wrong paperwork. So this really speeds things up. It records the information real time at point of receipt, at point of consumption, at point of shipment. And you only have to record it once. Somebody's not writing it down one time and then putting it in through another screen. And the last thing that I wanted to point out was, I want to go back up to my distribution tab. I didn't realize I'd gotten away from that. But I just wanted to demonstrate again that lot traceability, because we did talk about this. I just want to show that I could take a lot for any particular ingredient that I want, like a sorbitol that I've got. This is called D-sorbitol, and it's 70% potent. And I'm just going to grab a lot number, which is the first one, and display the results. And what this gives me is a cradle-to-grave tracking of this lot number of this ingredient through the production of aspirin tablets, putting those aspirin tablets then into different packaging, into different bottle sizes. and in the end, identifying the shipment number, the customer, and the name of the customer that ingredient went to over time. So with that, I have the information I need in enterprise management to do that recall within a matter of seconds, not even hours. Okay, so with Brad, with that, I've completed my agenda, and I'll turn it back over to you, and it's just 2 o'clock.
All right, I appreciate that. And thank you everyone for staying with us. Please go ahead and submit questions if you have any. I am just going to wrap up the rest of the presentation, but definitely submit questions and we're going to go ahead and address those. But I do just want to quickly tell you about Liberty Technology Advisors. We're a 100% independent management consulting company. We're really focused on improving clients' business performance, systems, and processes, and use technology to replace outdated systems while focusing on those processes. Sage, EM. Sage brings affordable and flexible ERP solutions to the SMB market globally with enterprise management as its premier product for the middle marketplace. Sage offers companies a lifetime partnership through its products and services. And if you enjoyed today's webcast, please join us for the remainder of the series. It will be in 2 weeks. We'll be talking about inventory forecasting and long-term planning on the 21st. And then in 4 weeks, we'll be finishing up with harnessing actionable data for informed decision-making. So it looks like we did have a question come in, question or two actually. So I will open this up to both John and Mark. Are you starting to see a trend of more companies being asked to hold consigned inventory?
Oh, that's a very good question, and the answer is yes. And consigned can go 2 ways. One is the customer can purchase it from you and pay for it, but you still stock it and store it for them. And what we do in enterprise management is set them up with a separate warehouse. And then when they want to pull from it, why we just generate a shipment transaction to ship it out to them, because we do not need to re-invoice them. So we don't need to create a sales order. We just create a shipment notification and send it out. The other side of that, many times your customer will want you to supply material or product, put it at their facility, but you still own it. And we do the same thing. We work with it the same way. We create a separate logical warehouse. Now what we do is we have a transfer document in enterprise management that transfers that to their warehouse. And as they pull from it, once a month or once a week, they'll send you a list of what they pulled, or you go do a cycle count, and then create a sales order for what they've pulled, go through and do the shipment and the invoice and generate them an invoice. So very easy to handle. And yes, we're seeing a lot of customers doing that now.
Yeah, and just to dovetail upon that, Mark, so the challenges that they face, the system can handle what they need to do in running a modern ERP system. It's also the physicality of where they put the product within their warehouses to know that they're selecting the right product. So to Mark's point, they may have a virtual warehouse set up to store either the consignment or the vendor managed inventory, but in order to pull from that exact location, they have to know where it's at physically. So it's important to tie the physical movement of the inventory to the virtual movement of the inventory within the system. Where those two separate, problems start to exist, because the system may say I've got 16 of these in stock in inventory location ABC, but when the picker goes to ABC, they may not be there. So that's why the scanning capabilities, the transfer capabilities, all of the back-end systems that Mark had talked about happening to know exactly where your inventory at are so critical.
Yeah, good, very, very good point. Thanks. Okay, another one there, Brad?
Yeah, it looks like we got one more, and then, I think we'll point any other questions that people have if they want to reach out directly either to Joe Ambrose at Liberty Technology Advisors or Jeff Steinecker over at Sage with any more questions. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Okay.
But that last question we have that came through is, we're a B2B company. Are you seeing any trends for opening up inventory levels to partners via a web portal or other means?
And I'll start with that one too, and the answer is yes. I mean, again, back to that whole Amazon scenario. Everybody needs access to information and access to product right away. They don't want to wait anymore. Everybody wants to be lean. They want to keep as little product around sitting on the shelf and on the floor as possible. So definitely yes, we're seeing that all the time. And if you can provide your suppliers access to the things that they supply to you, then they could be doing a lot of that grunt work. They could be looking at inventory levels. When it hits a reorder point, they could be letting you know, or they could be generating a purchase order through a website. And I say purchase order, meaning it would be a purchase order to you, a sales order to them. So you could really, push some of those duties out to your suppliers and to your customers by using portals.
We're seeing that also, and we're seeing it on both ends. So we see it on the end of, so you're a B2B business, but you also have suppliers that deliver to you. So we're seeing those businesses wanting access and insight into what the supplier has in stock, as well as being able to promote that out to their customers and their customer base that's out there. And some of it's being done via portal. There's more direct contact going on. And the issue becomes, how many times do I have to enter something, or how many different systems do I have to go to understand this? So we're starting to see a trend, which is in its infancy yet, of being able to connect directly into the ERP system to see what inventory you have, rather than through a portal where you're uploading that information from your ERP system to a portal, and then somebody has to go and pull that from the portal into the system. And we see that a lot in the automotive industry right now, and in the industrial supply industry right now, where they're looking at things from the perspective of, we've just updated our orders, or we just updated what we're going to need over the next 3 months. But if you don't have somebody at your organization that's actively looking at that, you can miss it. So that's why we're seeing more of the direct ERP integration going on as well.
Great.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
again, thank you for everyone who joined us today. I hope you found this beneficial. Again, if you have questions, we are definitely around and here to answer them. We look forward to hopefully seeing you at the remainder of the series. And I do want to thank Mark and John for joining us today. So thank you guys, and thank you to everyone who came.
It's been my pleasure. Everybody have a nice afternoon.